Hi guys, welcome to Backend Engineering School, and I hope this video finds you in good health. In today's video, we will be discussing about the key areas that you can focus on to prepare for your next Java backend developer interview in 2024. Remember, this video only applies for the candidate who has at least 2+ experience into the IT industry development, or if you are someone who is in some other separate field and want to transition into the development field, this video is for you. If you are a fresher watching up this video is not for you. You can comment it down. I can come up with a separate video that will cover the key areas to get into the backend development. All right, so let's quickly begin with the topics that we have. So you see, I have written a newsletter on the suchet.substack.com. There, you remember, I always keep on creating the newsletters on every Saturday and Sunday. Here, whatever content I'll be talking about is written right here. You can go on the suchet.substack.com, find the newsletter, go through it in the deep detail. And here, if you go in the article, if you go down, I have attached the mind map as a picture. In case you want to prepare offline, you can simply download the PDF version I have attached as a Google Drive link and then save into your local computer and prepare. So here, let's not waste much of our time and quickly begin with it. So the overall topics I have divided into the main topic and the subtopics of it, right? So there are several main topics. So we will go through the main topics first and then we will deep dive into the subtopics of it, right? So you see this mind map, right? It's a big mind map. So I'll probably, you see, it starts with the preparation. And the first branch of it starts with the fundamentals. So you have first fundamentals, right? And then you have frameworks part. If you are a Java developer, or let's say if you are a Python developer, or let's say you are XYZ any developer, the whole preparation should be divided into these main topics, right? First come your fundamentals, your language fundamentals that are pretty much required. Then comes your framework part, right? So for example, if you are a Python developer, whatever language you are using Python, you are using Python 3, then whatever framework you have used for your Python 3, right? For example, if you have Java, then whatever framework you have used for Java, for example, Spring Boot, some people might be using Quarkus, etc., so on and so forth. Then you must have some experience into microservices. If not, then you will have to prepare. We will see what to prepare, what not to prepare. Then we have system design fundamentals. I say system design fundamentals. And then we have advanced system design and distributed systems. Now by this topic, you must be wondering, I'm a 3+ experience guy into IT industry. Why do I have to prepare for advanced system design, distributed system? You don't have to. Remember the fact that this mind map, whatever the picture I have created here, is an average picture. It's a standard picture there, right? Now, based upon your experience, we will see what you have to prepare and where you have to focus in depth, where you not have to focus in depth, right? Even if you go to the newsletter, you will see in the down below, I have created the knowledge levels, so not in depth and not required. Now, based on the experience and the knowledge level, I have separated everything. For example, if you have 2 to 3.5 years of experience level, for example, you don't have to prepare system design fundamentals. Many people today who prepare for the giant companies like Google, Microsoft, right, and the mentors for them, they tell them, okay, to at least prepare for some kind of system design. In my opinion, I've never been into Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and these much bigger giant companies. I have been always into the consulting companies and few of them from the product based companies. They never asked me system design. And trust me, honestly, from my personal experience, nobody will expect you to write system design architecture if you only have 3+ experience level, right? So you don't have to worry about it, at least from my knowledge. And I have been into the average kind of company, so I can only teach you how to be in the average companies. If you ask me, how can I teach you to get into the Google? I cannot, because I never been into Google. I can only teach what I have been so far, right? But that's okay. That's a separate story. So if you want to prepare for system design, that's your choice. You have enough time, go for it. I will not stop you, right? But I'm only telling you my perspective as per my experience, what I understood so far. So now let's go back. Then we have advanced system design. Then we have very important, this green is very important, project in depth current organization, right? And then we have in the end the problem solving and the database part, right? So problem solving means the arrays, the linked list, the data structure, different kind of data structure. We will see that, right? But let's begin from the very beginning. Remember, and after this video I'll be creating another video which will be based on the IT market organizations, right? So you see I have created different kind of the IT organizations. For example, here is the consulting organization. There are many digital transformation organization. So that also depends on which company you will be appearing for. For example, if you are appearing for a consulting company that has a project, recently acquired a project in $1 million deal to migrate the legacy system into the new microservices architecture, or let's say new system, right? The cloud native architecture. They won't be asking you a lot of things into system design and the problem solving, linked list, so and so forth, right? They might be focusing on more on the project part because it's a consulting company. Remember, you may be working for 1 year from the same project, maybe in the second another year you may be working for the another project. What matters is what project knowledge you have, right? What value you contributed as an individual, as a team member to your customer. That's what matters in the consulting company. So remember guys, in which company you are appearing for the interview, what you should be preparing, the roadmap also depends on it. So these are major factors, nobody will tell you, but these are very important passive factors to prepare for any interview. Don't go and blindly prepare anything for any interview, right? So this is a generic interview. Then in this video we will go through the standard all the topics, and then in the next video we will see how can we customize it based on the IT company we are targeting and the role we are targeting, right? So guys, in this video first, so in here we have first of all the fundamentals, right? You are a Java guy, fundamentals is mandatory, right? Day in day out you will be writing code as a senior developer. If you are a junior developer, if you have a 2+ experience and then you are appearing for the interview, you will become a senior dev or the software dev. Maybe you are associate software developer as of now. Then no matter, even till the time you reaches to a position of solutions architect or staff engineer, you will be writing a lot of code, right? So you should have a strong hold on collections. Collections are so important, guys. Remember, collections are everything. Everything you see, everything, every single code, every single class you write, collections are everywhere. You should have, as a Java developer, very, very strong hold on the collections. If you are sleeping, somebody comes and asks you, okay, what is the priority queue? What is the main implementation of priority queue? What does priority queue indicate? You should have everything on the top of your mind, right? It's a heap. Either it would work on the minimum heap or the maximum heap. So those kind of understanding, the strong hold you should have on the collections, guys, right? Second part is the multi-threading. Recently, I have been appeared in an interview. These guys asked me, as a senior dev, these guys asked me first question in the Java developer. They did not ask me anything collections, any oops or all those things, right? If you are a guy who has less experience, 2+, 3+, they might ask you the oops concept. But you are a person, senior dev, they won't be asking you oops. They will be asking you on the project level, how did you implement multi-threading, right? What are the issue did you face in the multi-threaded environment and how did you fix it? Then it's a very open-ended question. It's not a fixed question, but in order to answer that question, you should understand the multi-threading, right? When I say multi-threading, don't go in depth or understand everything into multi-threading. Understand how thread works, how can you create thread pools, how thread works internally, right? And the number of core CPU you allot to the infrastructure on which you are deploying your application, how will that affect the multi-threading, how that is being directly proportional to it. Also, if you want to implement multi-threading, how can you implement it? What are the different frameworks in it, right? And for example, you have thread pool executor, you have fork join pool. What are the difference? What are the basic difference? Then you have completable future, right? In Java 8. And then later on in Java 20, you have virtual thread. You should have an understanding that what are these and how it works and how it is different from the other. That's the only thing. And eventually, as a senior developer, as a developer, you should have a very strong hold on one thing that will be very important in each company. No matter you go in any company, you do a sales job, marketing job, trade-offs. You should understand the trade-offs. What is trade-offs, right? So trade-off means that there are three things. There are three things. You want to put solution on the table to your senior. You put all these three things. Now your senior has to decide which one to go for. He or she can only decide if you tell them the trade-offs. If we select option 1, then we will lose these many things. If we select option 1, then we might gain these many things. If we select option 3, we will lose this capability. If we select option 2, we will gain this capability. Based on the requirement of the senior or the management on the project, that solution, the outcome will be considered. But being a senior developer, being a technical person, you should have a thought process of trade-offs. Very important, guys. Okay. Next, you have the Java 8. So in the Java 8, the important thing is the stream API. People generally ask you, many people can ask you the stream API implementation. They will give you a problem solving question. For example, they will say you have 8 lists inside another list, and then you will have to filter the records and get all the records who has age less than 20, right? So you may be using the flat map, collectors dot to list, etc., all those things. Or if somebody can ask you to convert it to the hash map, all those operations, collectors dot to map, all those, just try to. I have another separate newsletter article, suchet.substack.com, where I have covered 50 different stream API questions. You can practice them, right? And hardly it's a one-time practice. You create a project, try to do at least 20 to 30 problems. You will get an average idea. Now, based on the interview, you can answer, right? So that's one thing. All right, guys. And then once you are done with the stream APIs, you go for the design patterns. Very important. And now understand the fact that nobody will ask you what design patterns do you know. That hardly matters, because you may have prepared for everything. What is important for the design patterns is the application. How did you apply those design patterns in your project? For example, prepare 2 or 3 design pattern. For example, prepare for observer pattern. Take or draw any scenario where you used observer pattern in your project. First, second, select any other. For example, you can select for strategy pattern, right? And then you can say that in the medical line, there were different 2 diagnoses. Based on the diagnosis type, I selected the strategy on the fly, right? So try to relate the design pattern in the project. How did you use? Prepare any 2. You are done. If interviewer will ask you what design patterns you implemented as part of your project, just quickly answer them, okay, these 2 and these were the scenarios. The guy will understand, okay, he's actually done the design patterns, right? And if you want to upgrade yourself and to become a good developer, then I'll say that prepare for each design patterns, right? So that's the third thing you can prepare for. Fourth thing in the fundamentals is the generics. Now generics, if you are a 2+ guy or 3+ guy, you don't have to prepare for generics. Understand? If you are someone who is senior enough, right? Because let's say if you get into a company who is writing libraries, you see, if you are using Spring Boot, or for that matter, you are using any library, you see all those libraries are generic enough to use with any format. Let's say you can use string with it, you can use integer with it, you can use long with it. Why? Because they have implement generics in it, right? If you are using JMS into your Spring Boot, you see, you can create different type of, you can use Spring JMS for different kind of messages, right? Because they support the generics, right? So maybe you are a senior and you get into consulting company, or let's say XYZ any company, there you might be writing any library, or they have any requirement where they write a lot of generic code as a library, and as it being a third party library, other vendors uses it. So you have to write a lot of generic code, and this is where generic comes into the picture. It's very important. You can, I'm not saying become an expert or let's say 100% expert in generics. Understand the idea and the fundamentals. You'll get it. Okay. Once you're done with the fundamentals, see, I have taken a lot of time to explain it because I want you guys to understand why, right? Why is very important. Before going through it, you should understand why. Now, second thing, the second main topic, and then you can prepare it, right? You can, for example, if you are a guy, you are working, you want to prepare for the backend developer interview, I would say preparing for collections and multi-threading will hardly take 1 day or 2 days, let's say. Java 8 and then design pattern will take you 1 day, right? And then in generics, I would say 1 day. So in the 4 days, you can prepare the whole fundamentals of Java. It's very easy, guys, right? All right. So now in the frameworks part, we have several other things. Now frameworks are very important. So people may be asking you some questions of framework, but those will be very generic. For example, how in your organization, how are you doing database migration? Now you may be using database migration in your organization, right? Using Flyway or Liquibase, etc., so on and so forth. You may be using anything, but point is, I would say before telling them the project based answer, first prepare for the database migration in your local. Try to create a Spring Boot project. See a tutorial on the YouTube that how you can implement the Flyway in your the Spring Boot. Try to connect it with the MySQL, Postgres, any database, and perform the migrations and understand the core idea of migrations. It will hardly take 1 day. Just sit on the Saturday or Sunday. You will be able to prepare for the database migration. And then, but don't go directly to the database migration. Before that, understand the Spring Boot fundamentals. When I say Spring Boot fundamentals, I actually mean that you should have an idea, because you see, before a Spring Boot, we used to do everything in the Spring, right? So Spring has a concept of dispatcher servlet. Now in this dispatcher servlet, you used to define an XML file. Spring Boot, you don't do it, right? Because Spring Boot does it automatically inside. But how that works? That's the question. You should understand that why. How that works internally, the dispatcher servlet, and map it a particular request to a particular controller. These understanding you should know how Spring Boot internally works. You have a Spring Boot and then a request comes in. How does it map to a particular thread? All that understanding, right, guys? The servlet container and all those things, I would say hardly will take few days, right? A couple of days. Try to dig down, just look through any PDF, the ebooks online who are a good writers. If you want a separate video on these kind of clarity, comment it down. I'll come up with the internals of Spring. I'll try to make you understand, right? Those kind of Spring Boot fundamentals. And the other thing, for example, if you want to use the different kind of configuration files, how can you use that? This is one part. Second part, if you want to, let's say, create different kind of beans and same bean with 2 different names, how can you do that? Those kind of fundamentals of Spring Boot you should be aware of. Now, second thing is the JPA, and it is very important. I would say it's very important because in each organization we are using database. Now, let's say if you are using a relational database, Postgres or MySQL, you are creating entities to map. You are using ORM. Basically, JPA is nothing but the implementation. JPA is any ORM, Hibernate or anything. You should have an understanding. If you have 2 tables, right, you will create a data structure, the schema, tables and everything using database migration. But the table, how do those 2 tables can be related in terms of the Java objects, that will come from the ORM, the JPA. And now the JPA, how this relation can you map? For example, if there is one product and the same product, let's say if there is there is a brand, then same brand can contain multiple products. Is one to many mapping. From the product perspective, you see it's a many to one mapping. How can you implement in the ORM? So that's understanding you should have. If you want to perform the inheritance, how can you perform the inheritance in the ORM? Those kind of things is very important, right? Along with it, now if you are a senior guy, you can also understand. Let's say if you are a junior guy, you don't have to worry about the connection pooling. But if you are a senior guy, if you are 7+ experience, 8+ experience, 6+ experience, you should understand how Hickory CP works, how connection pooling works. How, because you see it's a big problem, right? If you go to the production, you have a heavy load. If you perform performance testing on your application, you will have a very heavy load on your application. Now everything works well when you work in local, right? Everything starts failing when you go into production. So how can you tune in your connection pool? It's very important. You should have that knowledge. As part of JPA, you should have that knowledge. Now, and then the end, you should have a knowledge on latest features in JDK and Spring Boot 3 because and the Spring 6. You see, because in the JDK 17, Spring Boot 3 is compatible with JDK 17. So you see, if you use your Spring JDK 17 with Spring Boot 3, it does not use Java X, it uses Jakarta Enterprise Edition. So there are several changes. So you should be aware of few of them at least. If somebody asks you, okay, what are the enhancements that you have in as part of Spring Boot 3? For example, for tracing purpose, you have sleuth, right? But Spring Boot 3.x doesn't have the sleuth. They have deprecated it. They have added the micrometer instead of it. So you should have those kind of basic understanding of what is going in latest in the market, right? So that kind of understanding. Now, all right, guys. So, and preparing for the latest updates, it hardly will take any time. You don't have to put a lot of effort. You only go to some websites, try to see what are the enhancements that has been done, go through it, prepare. And I would say when you are preparing for any interview, follow a practice, right? For how can you follow a practice? For example, I have given you all the list of this. Now you note it down to your any Google document, right? Create the number of days. For example, you are in the month of August, you want to start preparing for interview from the October. So you have August and September, 2 months. Now in the 2 months, you write it down all the topics and then you prepare one topic at a time, cross it and go to the next topic. Or you can create a plan. How can you distribute all the topics into 2 months? In the end, try to leave 10 days for the revision, right? And prepare for the 50 days for all the topics, right? So those kind of plan you can do. And then when you are actually preparing for an interview, don't go blind. Try to be very organized. How organized? When say organized means create a Google document or Microsoft Word document, write this is Java 8, and then write from where did you learn it. I learned from this project I have created into my IntelliJ in my local. So when you do the revision or before ending an interview that you will be appearing in the month of October, November, December, let's say next year, you go to that document, revisit from where did you learn, you will go back and do a revision of it. So your brain will be planned accordingly, right? So try to be organized when you study or you preparing for anything. All right, guys. So let's come back to our plan. And then you have microservices. So I will try to cover fast. Otherwise, this video will be very longer. Then you have microservices. Microservices, if you are very 2+ experienced guy, you don't have to prepare in depth. And again, I will not be repeating those things, right? You can go here and see the plan. If you are 2 to 3.5 years, 3.5 to 5 years, what you have to prepare in depth, not in depth, and or not prepare, right? All those things you can go through here. You can subscribe to my newsletter and get the idea from here. I'll go back from microservices, try to understand the microservices patterns. What all microservices patterns we have. At least if you don't want to read all, don't read all, but at least understand the ones that you may be using in your project. For example, if you are working for an organization that is using microservices architecture, your organization may be using the anti-corruption layer, but you don't know that it's an ACL, right? And maybe your organization is using CQRS, but you don't know that it's using CQRS. Maybe your single database has been shared among multiple services, so it's a shared database architecture in the data management, but you maybe don't know that it's a shared. So try to analyze the architecture you are in, try to study wherever however your organization is maintaining the governance of documents, try to see how what your architecture is there any microservices pattern that is being implemented in your project architecture, that which is good enough. If you don't have that knowledge, that's okay, that's pretty much okay. Open Google search microservices patterns, pick out any 4 or 5, understand them, do a Google YouTube video. Even if you go to my YouTube playlist or my YouTube videos, you will get many, right? I have already explained a lot of microservices patterns. You will get an idea. Then understand how if your organization is using microservices architecture, how your microservices architecture has been planned and implemented in your current organization. Then in the end, you should know what are the different trade-offs. For example, when you are using the microservices architecture, it's a distributed system. You fall under a lot of problems as well if you don't basically fix, if you don't have any awareness of it. For example, you might fall into the thread performance, right? Because you have 2 different features into 2 different these services. These are talking to each other by any means, by means of API, by means of service, by means of messaging, by means of your job. So the point is, there could be some problem of performance because one service is calling to another service. But that is not the case with monolithic application. So one trade-off, you might fall under the performance issue if you do not have the reliability implemented correctly, right? So those are different trade-offs. Those you can learn from online very easily. If you want me to come up with a separate video on it, comment it down, I'll come up with a separate video on it. Even from the everything that we are discussing, if you want me to come up with any separate video, I can come up with any separate video and try to explain you the basic concepts of it, right? But you need to comment it down. Once you are done with the system design, the microservices, sorry, you can prepare for system design. So for system design, you don't have to prepare for everything. You don't have to prepare for everything. When I say everything, that means you need to understand the building blocks. You should understand how DNS works. You should understand how CDN works. You should understand how load balancer works, how API gateway works, how cache works, right? A lot of things. But see, if you are somebody who has 5+ experience, you don't have to go in very depth. If you are someone who has 6+ experience, you should go in depth. In my opinion, you should go in depth. If you are 8+ guy and 8 years experience, you should definitely go in depth because you are a senior developer who will be contributing a lot of into the designs, right? You should understand these concepts. These are the building blocks, right? For any architecture, you should understand how it works and what are these. Now, second thing, if you are an experienced enough 6+ guy, you should also prepare for some kind of your designs and architecture. Prepare for 5 or 6 case study. Also understand, because these are the different aspects of any system design for these pillars, right? Performance, scalability, reliability, and security. If as an interviewer, I ask you, how did you implement scalability and what are your thoughts if you have a system of Paytm? Or let's say if I ask you a very basic question, if you have a project, how did you implement scalability in your project, right? What was the scalability aspects of your project? If you are somebody who don't even know scalability, that's an issue. Understand the scalability. Then later on, understand how can you implement scalability. Then understand how can you implement scalability from the deployment aspect. For example, I would say, okay, yes, we implemented scalability. So in the deployment level, we were all the container orchestration, we were using Kubernetes, right? So we were horizontally scaling the number of pods based on the load traffic that we have. Now, all the services we are writing, these are stateless services. So we can easily horizontally scale it. So these kind of scalability aspect you should know, and same applies for the security. For example, you will say, yes, we were using OAuth2. Why OAuth2? You might say, okay, we have the UI and we have the backend in the same infrastructure, so we were using the direct password credential based OAuth2, which used to generate a bearer token and pass it to the backend, and then there is an authorization server that used to verify if it's valid or not. And for third party, we are using, you could say, we are using OAuth2 with the authorization code grant type. So those kind of understanding you should have always. Or you could say, let's say we implemented retry, we implemented rate limiting in order to ensure the reliability of our system, right? So these kind of important aspects you should know as part of your system design fundamentals. Now, if you are any guy who has like 8 plus 10 plus experience, then you should only go for distributed systems, if you have become a solutions architect. For example, if you're a 10 plus year guy and preparing for solution architect or staff engineer, senior staff engineer, principal engineer, then you should understand a distributed concept. For example, you have consistency level, you have a strong consistency level, you have eventual consistency level, you have weak consistency level, right? You have isolation levels. You should understand what is casual consistency, right? In a Facebook, if in a Facebook post, a celebrity has done a post and there could be millions of comments, right? And now if you perform sorting on those comments, it will hardly work because everything is so distributed, right? The concept of casual consistency comes here. For example, in these comments, what matters is if I'm commenting on a comment, then my comment should always come after that comment, right? So that's a casual consistency because these two comments are related casually to each other. So these kind of things you should understand if you are preparing for any solutions architect. I am preparing for solutions architect, so I have prepared all these concepts. Now comes your very, very, very important topic, project in depth in your current organization. If you want me, I can create a separate video only talking about project in depth in the current organization. And I can also tell you what to say, what not to say, what questions can come up, what questions cannot come up. All you need is to comment that in the comment section. All right. So I'll try to create a separate video, right, to explain because it's a big topic. And then I'll leave this to the next topic, and right after this video I'll be creating another video, and then I'll be putting those videos part 1 and the part 2, right? Now go down. You see you have problem solving. Now if you are preparing for any tier 2 company, right, you don't have to go a lot of deeper into problem solving unless you are preparing for any giants or you have I don't know if you have a choice to prepare very depth in the data structure and you have a goal to prepare for 300 problems on lead code. I don't have that much courage. I cannot prepare, so I prepare few of them. For example, I prepared my problem solving questions on arrays, linked list, binary search, hash map, and heap. If more you want, you can prepare for binary trees as well. In few of the companies, some people had asked me one question for binary tree. They asked me, but most of the time I have seen that the question has come up in the linked list or arrays, right? And sometime hash map. And if questions can come up, for example, if somebody asks you, can you, in the order of n, can you get me the third largest number in the array? So I used to apply the array techniques and see how if I can get the answer. But you see, by applying the techniques on the array, the basic array, getting the third highest element, it's very difficult. Only way of doing it is the using heap. You will create a heap, right? And then you will try to put the 3 elements into it at a time, and by the end you will reach to the end of array. You will basically take out one element, the third largest, then you will take a min, and you will take the minimum element. You will see that okay, this is the third largest element. So you need to prepare, you need to try to do 7 to 8 questions in each topic, so you will get an idea how to prepare for these problem solving questions. But trust me, if I'm a guy who has experience enough, I will not spend a lot of time unless I'm appearing for any big giant companies like Google, Facebook. I'm not discouraging you to not prepare. I'm not demotivating you guys to not prepare for this topic. If you have efficient time, it's your choice, go for it. I would say it's very nice, right? Again, your choice, I'm telling you my perspective only. Then comes the last topic, the database. You should have a basic idea of, get an idea of as the SQL based database and the NoSQL based database. Pick up any, understand the trade-off. For example, if you have a read heavy system, you should use MongoDB. If you are write heavy system, you should use Cassandra. Why? You should Google it, right? Now you should understand the indexing, and if you are a senior, you should understand how indexing works in depth, right? You have different type of indexing. When you run a query, right, where clause with it, you see your engine, your database engine is very smart. Your engine basically perform and understand and try to think that if it needs, it can be an indexed query or cannot be indexed query, right? So how it works internally, you should know. Also, you should know what are different type of your indexes, right? Yeah, and then you should know that what is your so you should know that what are different type of indexes and how it works internally. For example, you should know how it is what is clustered index, what is non-clustered index. So your database is by default, few of the databases by default created your primary index, right, which is kind of nothing but your clustered index. So what it does is, the way in the operating system that stores everything in the memory in terms of pages, right? So what you do is you organize each row and then the order one after another, right? It's a sequential, so your search becomes faster. So but in the non-clustered, it's not the case. You may store 1, 2 and 8, right? And maybe in the other page you store 15, so your sequential search is not much faster. So those kind of understanding and trade-off you should know in terms of your indexing. And then you should know there are different kind of isolations in transactions in database. You should know each of them. You can go over it. There are kind of 4 or 5. You should know how it works, only if you're senior. If you are a junior guy, and then if you are a mid senior guy, you can focus on the different kind of joins, right? And how in joins in terms of query, try to do some exercises, right? Also see the problems in the database. For example, there is a double locking problem, right? If two guys try to book a same ticket at the same time, how can you avoid it? One solution is you do pessimistic locking. Second solution, you use a constant on it, right? And the third solution is using optimistic locking on it. So you should know all these things. And if you are a much senior guy, for example 8+ year experience, 10+ experience, you should know the idea of replication and partitioning into database horizontally, vertically, right? And how the async replication, the sync replication, all those things, right? Because let's say if you are a guy and you have a disaster recovery, you may have to implement, or may or may not have to implement the replication between the DR, the disaster recovery, and the production database, or some kind of exercise you can always put on in front of the interviewer. If the interviewer is from the management or the senior person, and he or she will always get impressed that you have this much depth knowledge. So the summary is, if you deep down and write down all the topics on the paper, right? So if you write down all the topics and the subtopics of it in the document, and write from which source or website you basically learned all this topic, write it down. At the time of revision, you go back and revision from the same sources again. And your source should be 2 or 3. Don't rely on single source, right? Because the people like us are writing on the internet, they might be writing incorrect, or their understanding still has some kind of scope of improvement. That's okay, nobody is perfect, but you should try to understand from 2 or 3 sources, right? So now, so far we understood how can we prepare for the backend developer interview. Now that depends how much time you have, and then for which kind of designation you are preparing for. That will basically decide what to prepare, what not to prepare, right? A basic idea, if you are still confused, a basic idea I have written down in my newsletter. You can go and check it out. You will get an idea. And then this project in depth in the current organization is very important topic. It's a big topic, and if I would have covered it here in the same topic, it will take another half an hour, right? So this video will go longer than usual. So I will try to create a next video right after this video. I'll put it in the part 1 and part 2. And then I hope you get an idea what to prepare, what not to prepare. And then all the best for your preparation, guys. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you so much. And comment it down if you want a separate video, if you still want a clarity on anything. I'm on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can comment down in this same video. I'll try to come up with the explanation or the other video. Thank you so much, guys. I'll meet you in the next video.